In this video, we will look at ordering material requirements for orders that are open within FloorVisio. To do that, we will select Orders. We'll click on Order Requirements and we'll see that it has View Requirements with so many days out. The default days out is set inside of your system settings. The system settings for this account is set at 45 days out for the default. When we click on View Requirements, it will look through the system to determine which work orders still have open material requirements to be ordered. Now the default is 45 days out in this system. We can change that by selecting a different quantity of days out. This does not change the default as we see when we look at the order requirements. It's still 45 days out. It would only let you select what you want to see in the list of requirements to be ordered. So we see that we have 3 different material requirements to be ordered. We'll begin with this first one, which is not a purchase part number or PPN. And the second one is a purchase part number of 15 for 18 gauge steel. And the third one is also a purchase part number of 19 for black powder paint. We will begin with the second one for 18 gauge steel. So we would click on the Order button. Now this order screen is divided into 4 parts. The first part with the gray background shows you the purchase demands. This shows you all of the purchase orders you have out, how many you ordered, and the quantity that has been received. The second section has an orange background and shows the orders that are due within inside of your window. Here, it's 45 days. We'll in this section that it shows us how many pieces we have in stock, the setup quantity of material required, the quantity of material required for each piece manufactured, and then we see it totals the quantity required. And so here we have the total of these values. Now this value here of 0.5772 is the quantity per times the units to manufacture plus the setup pieces required. So the total required is 1.8981. Next, we see this third section with a light blue background is the purchase part details for PPN number 15. And here we will see that PPN 15 has 10 pieces in stock and who the vendor for this is. Now when we get to the fourth section with the green background, this is where we are creating the purchase order or a line item on an existing purchase order. It's important when creating a purchase order that we pay attention to this table right here with this data in it. And we see that quantity ordered, quantity received, and total demand have this gray background. That means that these values are coming from this area with the gray background. And the same is true for quantity required and the PPN quantity on parts. The background color is orange, and we see that those values come from this section with the orange background. Quantity required matches this quantity required. And the PPN quantity on parts is derived from this value here of 2 pieces, which is 2 times the quantity per plus the setup pieces required. And then finally, we see this PPN stock background color is light blue. The values are derived from this section in light blue. So we see that there are 10 pieces of the PPN stock and here we see the stock quantity of 10 pieces. So this table data here will calculate how many pieces you either have in stock or need to order. And so here we can see that we have already ordered 0.322, and that is coming from the section with the gray background. So gray background at the top of the screen. We see the quantity ordered. Here's the total, and it matches this data down here. The same with received. We can go here and see the quantities received. It matches the total demand. Again, it's gray. So we look in the gray, and we see the total demand of 1.8981. And then quantity required with the orange background is coming from this section with the orange background, and we see quantity required total matches this data here. The same is true for the rest of these values. So when it calculates, it sees that we have a positive of 8.2574, and that's indicated by the background color of the balance value being in green. So in this situation, you would want to, or more than likely, you would want to order this from stock. Now ordering it from stock, what that does is it lets FloorVisio know that the material is coming from stock. It will put on the work order that the requirement is to be pulled from stock as well. And so if we are going to satisfy these material requirements from stock, we can scroll to the bottom of this purchase order detail section and we can click the button Set to Stock. We see that will reload the page, and it will make the vendor to your company name. The PO will always be stock. The quantities will be the quantities calculated for the work orders. And then we see that here's the description, and it adds a purchasing note. This note here is just a summary of all of this data here in this table. So once you have clicked the Setup button, you would click Submit, and we will see that now that material requirement is gone. Now we'll look at this black powder paint. So when we click the Order button, we see our 4 sections of the purchase demands in gray, the orders due in orange, and the purchase part details in blue, and the purchase order details in green. So here's the table that we want to pay attention to. We could see that we've ordered 0.467 but have not received any of those items in yet. We see that the total demand is 5.9111, and we see our running total here of negative 5.4441. Our quantity required value is how much of this material we have on parts that are in stock, and how much of the material itself is in stock. And so we see that it has calculated that our balance is a negative 5.3819 as indicated with the background in red. So in this situation, we would need to create a purchase order to order 5.382 pieces from the vendor. Now you may want to round that up to a whole number such as 6 so that you order full quantities. Now when we go to order this material, we will do the ordering within the purchase order details. So if we want to create a new PO, we would select the button of New PO first. If we wanted to add this to an existing PO, if there's an existing open PO, we would see it in this drop-down list here. Now if we forget what's on this open PO, we can select it and then click the View PO button to make sure that this is the purchase order we would like to add these requirements to. So you can create a new PO or you can select an existing PO. In this situation, we are going to create a new PO and you pick the vendor you want to order the material from. We'll see that when I click the New PO button, it went ahead and gave me the next purchase order number. It will auto-calculate the line number on your PO. The unit of measure is taken from the purchase part number when it is set up. Now here are the 3 work orders that need to be ordered. And we see that the first work order is due on 6/8, the second one on 6/15, and the third one on 7/10. And we see here are the values that it has calculated that need to be ordered, and that would need a total of 5.382 or more to be ordered. And so as I click on these blue buttons, it will fill in the quantities here, and it will calculate how much I am ordering. And so here we see that I am ordering more than required. But, again, we may want to round this up to a whole number. And so we would come in here and change the values. And now we see that we're only ordering 5, so I have to have more than that. So we'll order 1 for this. Now we see that we are ordering 5.5, so I want to bring that up to a full value. Here we got total of 5.3. I'm ordering 6. And so here's what I'm ordering for each work order. The vendor part number and internal part number, these will be pulled from the PPN itself. The price each description is also pulled from the PPN data when it's set up. The purchasing notes, if you needed to give notes to the person who's ordering this material, you could type those notes in here. These notes will not be shown or visible on the purchase order. Now here we have attachments. If for some reason this was a purchase order to an outside vendor that is needing prints or DXF files or anything like that, any of the files that are in the OSS directory inside of this part number of sample fabricated part will be listed here in the attachments section of your purchase order. So if I look at the sample fabricated part, we'll see here the OSS has bracket.dxf. And so when I'm looking at this material to be ordered, if I want to attach this bracket.dxf, which resides in the OSS portion of the part, I can select it by checking this checkbox. The receive in will automatically receive this in. Typically, this is not used. And so once all of the data is filled in for your purchase order, you will click on Submit. Now one final thing to add here, this green section is for the purchase order. This blue section that shows your quantity of your purchase part number also has a description. So we see here we have a requirement description, and here we have the purchase order description. Typically, these match. The requirement description will be seen in FloorVisio on the order when you're editing the order, and it also will be what is printed on the work order. The purchase order description is only visible on the purchase order. Most of the time these match. There could be instances where you need the PO to have more information than what the work order has. Finally, if you want to remind yourself or give the vendor a due date for this material, we see here these gray buttons beside the work orders that are due. We can select the gray button on the earliest due date. And when we click that button, it'll ask us how many days in advance do we want this material to come in. And so for this instance, we'll say 7 days. When we click OK, we'll see that on the purchase order, it added a line saying this is required to be here by 6/1. So now once I have filled out the purchase order, I will click on Submit. And we'll see that now that material requirement has been satisfied. It is placed on order, and we only have one left. Now this last one is not a PPN. So when we click on order, we see the gray section that we cannot determine any purchase demands because this is not a PPN number. And the orange section still shows us the orders that are due within the window we're looking at of 45 days, and it still calculates our total required of 4.3299. And again, the table here in your purchase order shows you all these values and where they're coming from. You can click on any of these buttons for a descriptor that explains what the values are and where they come from. And so here we see that we need this 20 gauge 48 by 120. It is not a PPN. And so we're going to add this to this PO of 1023. Again, if we forget what's on this PO after selecting it, we can click on View PO and see that this is black powder paint. Now I may decide, oops, I didn't mean to send it to that vendor. Let's see what's on this PO. And that one's also black powder paint. And so we want to add it to this PO of 1022. And so just by selecting the PO here, we can add it to that purchase order. And here we see that the balance is a negative 3.5658. And here the total required is rounded to 3.566. Now here is the total required on the work order without the calculation of parts that are in stock. And so that's why when I see this value here of 4.3299, it's greater than the total required. But I need 3.566. So I could click on this and use that value, or I could simply type 4. But we need the total order to be equal to or greater than the total required. Again, the vendor PO, internal PN, each, and description is information all pulled from the details of the purchase part number. We see our description. There's no purchase notes. There is not any files that reside in the OSS directory of this part number. So we do not have any attachments to click. And so once we have filled in this information, we can hit Submit. And now we see we have ordered all of the material requirements for our orders. When we go to the home page, we see the 2 purchase orders that are still open and need to be sent. And so we will look at the POs, and if we are satisfied with this PO and ready to send it, we would simply fill in any information that we would want and we would create, view, send the PO by clicking that button. We'll see that this is a preview of what's being sent. We can also look at the PO as a physical attachment and we would choose send the email with FloorVisio, or we can create the purchase order, download the purchase order, create your own email within your own email client that will pre-fill out the subject and the text of the body. And then once you send the email manually, you will have to come in and set the PO as sent. If you send the email with FloorVisio, it will automatically set the PO as sent. We'll go ahead and send the email now with FloorVisio, and we see that the PDF file was created and has been saved. The sent date was updated and the email has been sent to this address with this attachments. And we can go back and view the PO. We now see the background is red because it has been sent but not acknowledged. So now when we go back to our home page, we see that we have sent in unacknowledged purchase orders of 1022. When this vendor replies back to the email and confirms that the order is in and a date that is good for the delivery, we will come in here and acknowledge this PO. And we would put in the price if different from the vendor. So we'll say that they're charged $7 for that, and they said they can have it here on the 25th, and they're charging $129.25 for this piece, and they'll have it on the 16th. So now when we save this, we'll see the background screen because it's been acknowledged. Now because we confirmed it and we added the dates here that they've confirmed in the prices, when we go look at the work orders, we'll see that the confirmed delivery date is on the work order. So going back to this work order, we'll see the confirmed delivery date is on the work order. Now we go back to the home page since that has been acknowledged and sent. It's no longer on the home page. And finally, we have this last one that's open and unsent, and we would do the same for it. We would go through and add any information that we want to add. We would create, view, send the PO, and we can send it. We review the purchase order, and we can send the email with FloorVisio. And we see the information here that it's been sent. And now we're waiting for this vendor to acknowledge the purchase order. When they come back and acknowledge it, we will select Acknowledge. We will confirm the price and the delivery date and then save. Background turned to green because it's been acknowledged. We see that we no longer have any purchase orders that are open and or unsent on the home page. Now you can view past purchase orders by clicking Orders, View a Purchase Order. And we see here is a list of the open and unsent, which we do not have any. And here is a list of all the open and sent. And here is the last ones at the top that we have looked at, so let's look at this PO 1022, which is one we just did. Then we also have an Acknowledge and Closed. And so that is ordering materials requirements that are on your orders within FloorVisio. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and contact us.